We want to be the champion for appraisers, where if the industry goes one way or the other way, we want to be there for it. And I always use this term, bottom up.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast.
Minisode.
And welcome back to the program, each and every one of you. Thank you for joining me. Dustin Harris, hanging out in the podcast chair. Got another minisode up for you. First time we've ever had a minisode with an interview. This will be groundbreaking for you. Want to stop here and remind you that we are sponsored by a great company called ANOW. ANOW is the way that I manage everything that happens in my appraisal office, from the orders to the business itself. Check them out. Go to anow.com. That's ANOW.com. And speaking of ANOW, this is kind of an unusual mixture between a minisode and an interview. I have the man behind ANOW on the program with me today. His name is Marty Haldane. Marty, welcome, my friend.
Hey, thanks, Dustin. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me on, especially for the first of the interview podcast.
Yeah. This is new. I think this will go a little longer than a typical mini-sode, but that's okay. This will be something fun. Marty, you come to us from north, up in the Canada regions. Tell us a little bit about that. What's your background?
Yeah, I am. I get called out on my accent all the time, so it's good that you just set that up first. Yeah, exactly. You're close enough to Canada, eh?
Right.
I was an appraiser for 10 years. I worked for my dad, who worked for his dad, who both started in the 70s, even my father did. So right out of high school, I had the decision to do I go off to college, or my dad was really busy and he said, hey, come work for me. And I thought, sure, why not? I don't know what else I'm doing. So went to work for him, and just, when you go to work for your dad, it's a really interesting scenario. A lot of people think that's easy street. This is great. You work for your dad, you get all this stuff, but that's where you do all the hard stuff and you don't get paid for it.
You got it.
Do all these things, but good appraiser. He's a really smart guy. Anything from residential to commercial and all that kind of stuff, and just everything. But then also the business aspect of it, just from ground up, of how to manage day-to-day employees, marketing, finance, payroll, all of those things. And that's really where I just got to know the whole business from start to finish, and not just going out and doing properties and valuing them, but literally what it is to run an appraisal company at a pretty young age. So I was really fortunate to have that start and wrap my head around everything.
You might know this, Marty. I was also trained by my dad. I find it interesting that your mentor, your dad, went into the aspects of business. I think that's one of the most common problems. I'll even call them problems across the nation. Is you've got a lot of appraisers who are excellent appraisers, but they really struggle with the business aspect. How did you feel as a young appraiser trying to learn appraising and running a business as well? That seems like a lot to take in.
Yeah, and you couldn't be more right. And we still see that today all over the place. Fantastic appraisers really struggle running a business, and that's totally fair because they're two very, very different things. And I got a good background on why that affected me so much, is because my grandfather was a fantastic businessman. He had taught my dad everything except how to run a business. So my dad is a fantastic appraiser, but struggles on the business side of things. So literally on day one, I had to learn the business. I had no choice. You could ask him today, how much money did you make last year? And he actually doesn't know. I said, go look in here right now. I don't know. But it's just different mindsets of like amazing appraiser. Give him any complex job and he's got it. But luckily that's just where I had to learn, because you're absolutely right. They're two very different things. Different personalities do it. And I was in the position where I had to do it. We actually, my grandfather had sold the business to my father and my uncle, and then they had a falling out. So when I joined the business, it was actually just me and my dad. They went from a large 15-person company to just two, and he's there paying bills, appraising. And then there's, all right, Marty, learn all this stuff and help me with this business side of things too.
Right.
So,
Marty, did you always plan on being an appraiser?
I guess you could almost say kind of, just because I've lived it my whole life. Because my dad too, like he worked at home for many too, so I've seen it. So certainly did I not plan and go to high school say I'm going to be an appraiser. I mean, I live in an area where there's a lot of oil and gas activity, but at the time I was 17, so I was too young to go work in the oil field when I graduated high school. So it was, hey, my dad said come work for me, and then it just made sense. And I'm super fortunate to have that opportunity and recognize that, and still give him credit, even though it was hard on him about his business. But he knows how important he was to me and how we got to where we are today. But no, I never really thought out. It just went
Just
in that
happened.
direction.
Just happened.
Just
So tell
happened.
me,
Just happened.
I think it's interesting. You're an appraiser in Canada. There's obviously some big differences between appraising in the U.S. and a lot of similarities, I assume, as well. Tell me, obviously you've been involved on both sides of the border. You deal with a lot of appraisers. I'm sure you have a pretty good grasp on the differences. I'm curious, and I think my listeners would be curious as to how appraising in Canada is different than, or the same as appraising in the U.S.
Yeah, there are a lot of similarities, but a lot of differences. You're right, and even internationally, we deal with people now all over the world, and it's really interesting to learn the different processes and the different things and the different reports that everybody does. But Canada and the U.S. are definitely the most similar and very, very similar. The reports look extremely similar. I mean, the Canadian reports have changed over the last couple of years. They have some new forms, actually really good forms. There's some new fields, but not too daunting. But to be honest with you, the process is still the same. I mean, from order intake, there's AMCs in Canada, same thing. There's not as many AMCs, that's for sure. I think there's about 4 or maybe 5 now, 5 or 6 in all of Canada. But yeah, the flow is still the same. The process is the same. The report at the end of the day, though, is interesting how different that is, because everyone in the US is used to the XMLs and Fannie and Freddie and UCDP and all of the upload and all the stuff that goes with that. And we know a lot about that recently, especially after we launched Nexus and seeing just how complex that world is and what you guys have to deal with. Because I will admit, as an appraiser in Canada, we never had to submit XMLs, and then now we build them. So it's been interesting to do. But in Canada, yeah, you produce your PDF and upload it to the AMC, and that's that. But it certainly helped us as ANOW breach into the US market very quickly, is because of the process of doing it. And that's really what we focus on, is the process of an order comes in, it gets assigned out. Doesn't matter where you are. Optimizing schedules and workflows and invoicing is the same everywhere. So we're fortunate that way. And a lot of the world is the same way too. They just have very, very different reports. Some of them are 2 pages, some of them are 30 pages for residential. We've seen them in Africa and Dubai and all that kind of stuff.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, fascinating.
They're all strangely similar though, processes.
Yeah, it sounds like technically you're looking at a similar process. What about regulatory? You don't have USPAP, for example. What do you have in Canada?
They were very creative, and they just added a C in the front of it. So they have CUSPAP, Canadian. So it's very similar, but a little different at the same time. But overall, like all the same governing pieces and protective pieces that are in there, and same continuing education requirements that go along with doing your update course and stuff like that. So it's funny. Yeah, I think I'm sure USPAP came first, and they just piggybacked off that and added a C to it and called it Canadian.
I used to have a mastermind student from Toronto, and we would talk in depth about the differences. And one of the things, if I remember correctly, and it's been a while, he was actually a member of my mastermind in the very beginning, before we had in-person masterminds. Actually, this was an online meeting that we had. But I believe he said something to the effect of comp photos really aren't a thing in Canada. Even inspections, it's not that big of a deal for an appraiser to send somebody else that's qualified, but doesn't necessarily have to be the appraiser in the property. Do you see similar things now, or is that tightened up?
Yeah, so the comp photo thing is exactly right. I can say, please, I've never had to drive a comp in my life, and nobody in Canada has to. I know that's a lot of people will say, oh, that would be nice. But but you're right, that doesn't exist here at all. And it's just, but overall, it's sorry, I just lapsed there. What was the second one?
I'm curious about, and this goes to a second question, so I'll parlay into that. But sure. He talked about the fact that he could send out an inspector to do the inspection. He didn't necessarily have to be in there. And I know you had mentioned, that your dad and grandpa had 15 people working for him at one point. It seems like that's kind of the norm up there in Canada, where you see more single solo appraisers. In the U.S., it seems like there's more, at least that I'm familiar with, firms up in Canada. It's easier to expand.
Sorry. So basically, you do see a lot more firms in Canada, a lot more larger companies. The US is highly entrepreneurial, so you see a lot of one-person shops going out, and I attribute a lot of that because there's a lot more loans and a lot bigger of a market, but also there's a lot more AMCs, and it's easy for someone to go out on their own and start their own business and do it quickly. So we do see that definitely in Canada. Some of our larger customers are in Canada, but the biggest ones are still in the US. But to be honest with you, there has been a lot of talk about bifurcating and sending in inspectors and having the appraisers, and the Canadian appraisers that I've talked to are fairly open to it, to be honest. There's lots that said, great, yeah, if I can sit at my desk and I can send someone out all day long, then great. But that hasn't really caught on that much. We still see everybody going out, the same appraisers inspecting it. The Appraisal Institute of Canada has started to I don't want to say promote it, but they're open to it, and there's lots of stuff and lots of discussions happening around that on how that could be possible, as long as obviously you have all the correct safeguards in place. And as usual, appraisers, we know to cover our asses left, right, and center. So that's the big thing. But it's just more one of those process things. I think Canada always looks to the US to see what's happening in the US and say, okay, can we do that? And you hear so much talk about bifurcation that's where it came up. But to be honest, of the thousands of appraisers we deal with in Canada alone, it's pretty rare still to be doing anything like that.
Okay. Marty, let's talk ANOW. What is ANOW? Where did this idea come from?
So it was a long time coming. So working at the company, at my parents' company, it was, like I said before, learning a lot of the business very quickly and the appraising side of things. And just like any other company, we looked at it and we said, hey, we need a system. Like, how the heck do we do this? We're so busy. We need to make more money. AMCs came in 2007, 2008. In Canada, especially, I started in 2004, if that's its context. And we thought, okay, we need to make more money. We need to save time. We don't want to go hire more people, because the old process was, hey, let's just go hire another manager or an admin. And there was times when we had 4 admins working at the company. And so I looked at things, and we tried Excel spreadsheets, and those are the worst thing ever. And nobody could update them. And we all know the problems with there. You don't even need to mention that. But it was like, okay, it's time to build something better. We looked for something. I've got a background in software development. I was a software developer when I was a teenager. I used to build websites for people if you're getting married or you had a small business type of thing, but not at the level that ANOW is at. So that was when, I just started pouring everything I had into building ANOW. Hired another contractor, and we would sit and work 20 hours a day building ANOW into it, the thing that our company's firm needed. We thought, what problems do we have every day, just managing workflow and people? And we just started, we got going, and we launched a product. And what we launched is vastly different than what exists today, just because we've had such amazing appraisers that we work with, giving us so much feedback, and a great development team, that we've now able to evolve the product into something that what you see today. So beyond just basic workflows and tracking files, into a full end-to-end process of really complex workflows and scheduling and invoicing and automation that you now get inside of ANOW. And it's really just where we've evolved into, because of my background in the appraisal industry. When someone throws a technical problem at us, I can say, hey, yeah, I did that before.
Right.
And this is how we can solve that. And we can look at it in that perspective. And I think that really helps, is I've heard it before, and you've said this, is the built by appraisers for appraisers. And this couldn't be more true with ANOW. Like, I legitimately am one. My dad still is one. I mean, I haven't done an appraisal in a few years now. So I think the last one I did was the end of 2013 as ANOW took off. But it's in my blood. It's what I know. I love this kind of world. I love being if I can be a champion for the appraisers, especially in a changing world where kind of on the defense, it seems like sometimes, but that's what I love doing.
You saw a need, you developed for that need. Obviously, things have changed and evolved as the time has progressed. What's the most surprising thing that you've learned as you've gone through the process of developing ANOW?
The most surprising thing is definitely just how different everybody can be. And it doesn't matter if we're working with a one-person company or a company with several hundred people inside of it, and the process is still kind of the same on a technical standpoint, but when you really dive into every company, they're also vastly different at the same time. It's kind of a contradicting statement, they'll look at you as saying, you're crazy, you don't do it like this. And you say, you know what, I talked to thousands of appraisers, and this is the first time I've ever heard that. That's a cool idea. But honestly, just seeing just how vastly different everybody is really interesting. It's really surprising, thinking that you can build something and this should work for everybody. And then you'll learn and say, well, I've been doing it like this for so many years. And then you leave it up to ANOW as a software company to translate that into what they really need into the developer speak. But that's been a fun and very surprising piece about this, is you think you've got it solved, and then someone else throws something at you, and you're like, wow, I never knew you do that. Never knew you could do it like that.
With that change, you obviously get a vantage point that many don't get. You and I are fortunate in that we work one-on-one with many appraisers really across the world. But tell me where you see this industry going. Get your crystal ball out, my friend, and what can we expect on the road here?
Sure, yeah, I'll put my stock market one aside and get my appraisal one, because they're both just as accurate. But no, I think there's a lot of talk about where the industry could go, but then there's where it should go. And there's lots of different processes that have tried to come in, and everyone knows about AVMs and different bifurcation pieces in there. At the end of the day, I think appraisers really need to step back and just take a look at their the tools they've been using. They haven't changed a lot over the years, whereas everything else around them is changing. So I think the need for appraisers is only going to get more and more prevalent. And I know a lot of people say, oh, no, the AVMs are coming, but yes, AVMs have been around for a very long time. As a software person, you know how to build one, you know how to deal with them. But the appraisal industry, I think maybe it won't be, like we talked about before, of the appraiser going out to every property every single time they're coming back and sitting at their desk. Maybe it will be. It's really going to be up to the lenders and the GSEs just to tell us what they want, and we have to react to that and not sit there and say, no, I can't do that. I'm not going to do it, because the reality of the situation is for every one that says no, there's 1,000 that say yes. And we just need to make sure that appraisers can be there and be part of the evolution wherever it goes, that you're there. And I say that as in a way like, oh, something's changing, but no, it's not. I mean, as far as we're concerned, we just invested a ton of time into building our new Nexus form filler report writer for the traditional way of doing appraisals, because that's what we believe in. It works. We have appraisers on our platform doing appraisals in 48 hours, 24 hours sometimes. And that's maybe crazy to sound, but that's just what people are doing with new processes, with new automation. And if we can keep giving better service like that, I don't see a lot of the industry changing. If people want to take 2 weeks to do an appraisal all the time, the reality is banks are just hyper competitive and they don't want to wait. And if they don't want to wait, then we're sort of at their mercy to whatever they can do and will do. But to answer the question, I don't see it changing too much in the foreseeable future, just because of the time that I've spent working with GSEs personally closely. The need for appraisers is high. The respect for appraisers is also very high on the very highest levels, because of the critical pieces that they provide that they're much harder to manipulate, much harder to compromise. And when you have professionals, and I love the word for appraisers is they're analysts. You give yourselves more credit. Then you're not form fillers, you're an analyst. You look at complex data that's sometimes not complex when you first get it, and you have to turn it into something much more complex and do that. And I think if appraisers can look at themselves in that way, is like, yeah, you'll see just how important you are. You can't just be replaced overnight with a machine, because that machine needs to learn off of appraisers anyways. So it's just different. So yeah, that's where I think it's going. It's not a great answer of all this crazy change and Skynet type of stuff, but it's just, I see it's staying pretty much the same it is, but arming appraisers with more tools so they can give better service and just different services to lenders and AMCs and stuff that they can do to promote their business and still produce the same reports that they always have, but just supplement that with other things and augment their reports or their business. And just opportunities like that are now out there where you can do that, instead of just picturing yourselves as another name on a spreadsheet delivering the same XML as everybody else. That's boring.
Absolutely. We're talking with Marty Haldane. He is the founder and president of ANOW Software. And of course, ANOW is a sponsor here on this program. Marty's heard me say this before, but I was a hard sell. Took several phone calls, several months looking at the software before I finally decided to jump in. And honestly, Marty, I was not real happy to begin with. And looking back on it, there's a reason for that. I had a very hard time cutting my ties with my system that I was using for years and years, and that I had perfected and probably gained a bit of an attachment to. But it was about 3 months into it that I finally said, you know what, if I'm going to dive into ANOW, I need to dive into ANOW. I cut the apron strings and have never turned back, never looked back, could not be more happy with what ANOW does for me. Folks, let me just give you an idea. At any moment as a business owner, I can log into ANOW. It is cloud-based. I can go onto my phone, my laptop, my tablet, my desktop, you name it, anywhere where I have a connection, and see exactly what's going on with each and every order. We keep the work files in ANOW. There is a schedule there. There are notes. There is a timeline, an activity feed, a punch list as we go through the process. I can see where we are for this month, last year, this month, last year. What am I doing with manufactured homes, private, multifamily, single family? You know, all of this can be done at the touch of a button, stuff that I used to spend hours organizing and understanding. Now, whenever I have a question about what's going on with my appraisal business, I can log in and ANOW is there for me. Check them out, folks. It's anow.com, ANOW.com. And welcome back to the program, everybody. Dustin Harris hanging out with my good friend Marty Haldane from ANOW Software. Welcome back, Marty. Appreciate you taking time.
Hey, thanks, Dustin. Glad to be here.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about what ANOW is. Let's say that there might be a few listeners out there living under a rock and really don't know. I guess we should start out with the most obvious question. What does ANOW even stand for?
Appraisers Now.
Love it.
So long name. Yeah. And And it has good meaning behind it because it's for appraisers right now.
I love it. Okay. So ANOW, what is it? For those that have not used it, they've heard maybe a little bit about it, but it costs money. I don't want to spend money. What does ANOW do?
So ANOW takes your whole business and puts it into a very pretty box that you can now have and look at it and learn about it at any point in time of the day. So we always say from intake to invoice, and you say, what the heck is that? But it's knowing what's happening in your business at all times. And yes, everybody kind of knows you're doing reports day to day. If you're one person shop, then you definitely know. But to be able to log every single order that you've ever done, have it at your fingertips so you can look at it from anywhere on any device, to pull reports that says how many AMC orders have I done this month, this year, versus last year, or realtors, lawyer work, or property types, single family dwellings versus duplexes, or my average fees for each property type that I'm doing consistently. So much of this stuff is what ANOW does for you. But yet all you're doing as an appraiser is you're just putting in a property address. You're putting in your client name that's already in the client's database, your fee, and you go on your way, you go to the property, you do it. And then ANOW just does all those things for your business so that you can make smarter decisions. So you can run your company and actually have to spend less time running the company because ANOW is keeping it all under one roof. And you can go out there and do the thing that you're really good at, which is appraising and valuing properties, and not have to focus on a lot of the other stuff and let us handle the monotonous, boring tasks that's what we're good at. So that's what the software should do. And that's really what ANOW is getting your life under control, letting you grow, letting you expand, saving you money. It does all of those things just depending on what you want to do with it. But it's
and I love that you brought up saving money, because I think too many appraisers look at the software itself as a cost. But I'm telling you, folks, it's what you get back in return in the saved time. And we all know that time is money. It will absolutely blow you away. One of the things I've loved about working with your company, Marty, over the years is the fact that you listen to appraisers. And you and I have had talks on several occasions. You've got a chat feature on your software where suggestions can be made. And these things are not just willy-nilly filed away in the back room. These are considered. Sometimes they can be made, sometimes they can't. Sometimes it takes a while. Sometimes it's very instantaneous. But the development of ANOW has been a fun thing to watch over the last few years. What's new about ANOW most recently?
So we've launched a lot of pieces over this last few months, but a lot of it's in our Nexus product. So to skip ahead a little bit on the management side, we launched our Nexus product, which Nexus, if you don't know what it is our report writer. And it's more than just a form filler. We're used to saying that term. I also, again, want to give appraisers more credit. It's a report writer tied into the process now where you get your order in ANOW, you sign it out, or it's logged in there for you, you click a button, and now you've got all of your order information in a full form builder. And we've got a mobile app that you can take to the property with you. It's completely optional if you want to use it or not. Collect all the property data, do your sketch, get your photos, come back to the office and write your report. And the really interesting thing about Nexus is, since it's tied into your business process, is if you have any staff with you, data entry trainees, or you want to get some, it's actually multi-collaborative. So you don't need to pass files back and forth, log into any servers. It's 2020 now. It's expensive and takes time and risky too, but you can just now open the same report at the same time. You'll even see, hey, Marty popped in, Dustin popped in. Dustin is typing right now, Marty is typing right now. Then there's so many different ways that you can look at doing an appraisal now, where if you say bifurcation is crazy, that's fine. But maybe you've got your data entry assistant putting in comps for you, or your trainee, or you're reviewing a report. But having Nexus under the same roof as your business management piece that you're putting in appointments for, you're updating clients, you're sending messages to your office, but then just one click to doing the appraisal report is a huge step forward for us as a company. And we've launched a lot of great features over the years on our management side of things. We're just about to launch next week a really cool text and email notification system that automatically sends text messages to contact for access and ordered by customers or borrowers or property owners to say, hey, Marty's going to be here at 3:00 tomorrow. It's a nice picture of my face. And add it to your calendar. Here's some tips how to get ready for an appraisal, like clean up the clutter, shovel the snow, if you're where we are, stuff like that, and reminders. So always pushing that forward. That's a really cool piece. But the Nexus report writer is really huge for us. And we recognize it's a gigantic project in a space that has very little innovation, but companies that have been around for many, many years. But we're really excited and really happy with what we've got so far. And we're already down and delivering hundreds and hundreds of appraisal reports through Nexus every week. And we just launched it in September. I
want to make sure people understand, because one of the coolest features, and you pointed it out, but I just want to reemphasize it if you don't mind, this idea of collaboration. I don't know the technical term, but this idea that you can literally be in the field taking a picture of the front of the house And 3 seconds later, back at the office 100 miles away, that picture pops into the report that your assistant is working on at the very same time. It's just so cool.
Exactly. It just opens up for new time savings methods and new things that you can say to your customer. Yeah, the report's almost done. I see the pictures on here, but just it's all in real time. It's collaboration. Yeah. Exactly. I don't know the technical term for it either. That's sexy enough for it, but it's just collaboration is key here. And yet, even if I say this lots too, like we have a lot of customers that are one-person shops. They say that doesn't matter to me, but you can look at it in a way that if you were to expand, if you were to get a virtual assistant even, that person can now go in there and help you with your reports. You can assign certain tasks to them and then think about how you can grow and take on trainees. Collaboration makes your life just 1,000 times easier. Version controlling and just mistakes in general. It's huge.
Marty, what does ANOW look like down the road? Let's go big. Let's fast forward 5 years down the road. What is your life? What does ANOW look like for appraisers?
Yeah. So my goal, when we look at ANOW, and you look at all the great workflow pieces that it has inside of it, but our most common used feature, biggest feature is our calendar and our scheduling and our map. For appraisers figuring out where they're going to be, where they're going, managing when they set appointments, that type of stuff. So ANOW is now doing some really smart stuff around suggesting times, trying to optimize schedules so that we can now go out and just do that for you. And it's like, whoa, that's scary. Don't book stuff on my calendar. And we would never do that for you but you would be in control about this. And it's about you making the most money that you possibly can as a person running a business. And yet you can throttle that because you say, hey, I make enough money. I want a nice lifestyle business. You can also control that through this. But really where ANOW is going is we want to be able to, when your client needs an appraisal, AMC or a lender, it's integrated with ANOW. It comes right in. You've got all the information. You go into Nexus, you do your thing. Appraisal's done. It's delivered. It's easy. It's optimized with your schedule. You didn't have to go anywhere else. You didn't have to fight with anything else. And that's really where ANOW is going, is being that full end-to-end process of that appraisal. So that you as an appraiser, you can sit back and do the smart part about it. Let us handle all the monotonous data things and just call them things is to generalize because there's so many of them. But that's just really where we want to go. We want to be the champion for appraisers, where if the industry goes one way or the other way, we want to be there for it. And I always use this term bottom up. I look at a lot of different things out there in many different markets, and they get built top down. And top down means we'll use our industry, the lenders, where people build requirements for lenders and then push them down the throats of appraisers and say, please conform to these. This is how you have to do it. I mean, even in Canada, there's an AMC that you have to use a different form software just for theirs, fill out a PDF form for it, but you have no choice. Mm-hmm. Whereas ANOW does things differently, and we've approached it very differently, where we build it bottom up. We say it's the appraisers doing all the work anyways. Let's build stuff for appraisers, and then let's take that right to the top so that they can help. And then everybody gets the benefit of these hyper efficient, happy appraisers who are doing their thing. They have great technology. And that's really where we're going to go. And I can't say specifically what technology we're going to build, and we've got at least a 2-year roadmap of things to build, but it really relies on what the appraisers ask us to build. And that's why we built everything this, like you said, Dustin, you've asked for some complex stuff and we built it. We like solving hard problems. Someone said, build us a report writer. A lot of people said that, and that's a huge project. And then we built it, and certainly no means is anything ever done. And we'll just keep going in that direction. We're going to push hard. We work with now tens of thousands of appraisers, and we get a lot of great feedback. The hardest part is picking which ones to do. Right. Honestly, we want to do everything, but sometimes you can't do everything. But that's we just want to perfect that end-to-end process, make appraisers important and continue to be important, and by arming them with great tools that make them just look fantastic.
Love it, my friend. You said a word that I think is a great word to end on. You said the word easy. ANOW makes it easy. Thank you, my friend. Speaking of easy, if any of you are on the fence and need to have a little easy push over the fence, Marty has been generous enough to provide my listeners with a 30% off coupon for the first 3 months. And Marty, I'll just tell you, I think it takes 3 months to finally say, okay, I'm ready to really commit to this thing. And so I love that this is a 3-month coupon, 30% off. You just have to use podcast 30, that's podcast 30 at checkout. Thank you, Marty, for that. And thank you for joining me today.
No, thanks for having me on, Dustin. And we totally get it. The first few months is daunting. You're all busy, but you're right. You just got to dive in, and we've got your back too. We've got a full support team, training, onboarding. Call us, email us, live chat us anytime. We'll help you.
I haven't asked my staff recently, but in the first year of using ANOW, I frequently in our staff meeting says, okay, guys, give me some feedback. Let's be honest, they use ANOW more than I do. I'm more on the business side. They're more on the day-to-day. And I would say, okay, you guys tell me, is this worth it? Do we need to go back to the old system? I about got thrown out on my ear when I even suggested that we move away from it. It's a great system that truly makes all of our lives much easier. Marty Haldane from Canada, thank you, my friend, for being on.
Thanks again for having me on, Dustin.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.